Now, Vauxhall have really beaten off the competition in the mass market executive car sector. The Omega is one of the most popular selling cars in Britain, and it's seen off the likes of the Scorpio, the Rover 800, although you still can get the Rover 800, but who buys those these days, and other cars as well in that executive sector. This is the newly restyled Omega, and this is the top of the range Elite. It's very similar to the Omega that was originally launched. Very few changes, just one or two minor changes at the front, the grille, and at the rear. Interior has been changed a bit. This is the Elite Omega. This will cost you over £30,000, which to me is rather expensive for a Vauxhall. Now, the Omega range starts at just under £20,000, rising to just over £30,000, which is the price of this Elite estate. But you do get everything on it. It's very well equipped. Leather upholstery, electric memory seats, climate control. There's a satellite navigation system in there and a quality sound system. You name it, it's got everything on it. But would you really spend that sort of money on a Vauxhall? You see, the problem for me about this car is this badge at the back, the Vauxhall Griffin. It worries me spending this sort of money on a car. I mean, let's face it, not many private buyers would spend this sort of money on a Vauxhall. If it was your money, you'd put it into a BMW, a Mercedes, an Audi, a Jaguar perhaps. Would you really spend £30,000 on this car, which perhaps in a couple of years' time is going to be worth maybe half, maybe even less of what you originally spent on it? And that, I think, is Vauxhall's main problem. It's a fleet car. It's not a prestige car in the terms of the prestige manufacturers that we know and love. It's a fleet car. You see these whizzing up and down the motorways. It's a very comfortable car. There's bags of room. Look at that. Plenty of room to get all your luggage in for the back. Take the kids away, the dog in the back, the kitchen sink, who knows what else. You can do it in a car like this. So, impressions of the Omega. Well, it's a very comfortable, very luxurious car to drive in, and particularly well suited really for motorway cruising. It's great cruising on the motorway at 70 miles an hour or so, maybe a little faster from time to time. What it isn't so great at, we think, is high-speed driving, perhaps down country lanes, really pushing it hard. There's a lot of body roll there. The suspension is very soft, and it tends to wallow a bit. In fact, somebody who had this car over the weekend, they took their kids out in it and they were nearly all sick in it, which doesn't really bear well for what is a very expensive car. So that doesn't impress too much. I think particularly the V6 3-litre engine in this Omega Elite is a little bit harsh when you push it hard. It's got a sport button on this automatic gearbox, which is great for getting going very, very fast, believe me, but it does sound a bit harsh, and perhaps the engine could have been dampened down a little bit with more noise insulation to make that better. The engine in the Elite is a 3-litre V6, which, as I mentioned, sounds a little bit harsh at times when you push it hard. 204 brake horsepower, so there's plenty of power there. 0 to 60 time is about 8-9 seconds, and a top speed of 140 miles an hour, so it's certainly quick enough if you can ever use that sort of speed on the Autobahn, for instance. One thing I wasn't very impressed with, though, was the fuel consumption of the car. According to the computer here in the Omega, it tells me that we were only getting an average of about 24 to the gallon over a touring route, which seems a bit thirsty for this sort of car. It should be producing perhaps 30 or so. 24 sounds rather a lot to me. So what's the gadget count on the Omega Elite? Well, we ran out when we counted up to about 333. There are so many gadgets on the car. There's Traffic Master, which tells you if there are traffic problems coming up ahead. However, the button and the indicator for the Traffic Master is hidden down here on my right-hand side out of the way, and you can't really see it. And sometimes it's a little bit frightening when you press the button and this voice jumps.
Westbound. Traffic flowing freely.
There we are. Voice jumps at you, telling you what's happening. Also, it's got Karen Phillips navigation system on it, which again is a little bit obscured. The screen for it's down here out of the way, and it takes a bit of a while to program it up, and really you need to be stopped to have programmed it in. And I still prefer the versions that have a complete map where you can actually see what you're going, whereas just entering a location that you want to go to and the car will point you in the right direction, hopefully anyway. What else has it got on it? Well, it's got a very impressive computer system that gives you average fuel consumption, instant fuel consumption, how much range you've got on your tank of petrol if you're driving at a particular speed, and a countdown stopwatch, things like that, all sorts of stuff on it. Good sound system, Bose sound system in it as well. Very, very gadget-laden car, plenty to go at. So my final impressions of the Vauxhall Omega, the Elite version that we've had on test. It's a very good, it's a very competent car. It has some concerns though, particularly about the driving position, and a lot of owners of Omegas have complained that the front seats lack support and are not very comfortable, and there are some concerns over that. Also, the cost of a car like this, £30,000 plus. As a private buyer, surely you wouldn't put your money into this. You'd go for a more respected luxury brand than a Vauxhall. You go looking for a good second-hand version of an Omega, which can be picked up at many good Vauxhall dealers or independent dealers, or the car supermarkets that are springing up all over the place these days. And particularly the lower-end Omega range is very, very good value for money indeed. Prices start at about £12,000 for an N-Reg Omega, which is not bad for a quality Executive Express. We wonder what Vauxhall are going to replace this car with eventually, because it's getting close probably to the end of its shelf life. And rather interestingly as well, in America, the Omega in this shape is badged as a Cadillac. Now in America, the Cadillac of course is a brand of luxury, and it's interesting to see that Vauxhall have brought the Cadillac across from the States to Britain in the shape and form of the new Seville, which is not a replacement for the Omega in no shape or form, because it's very much more expensive. But it should be interesting to see how Vauxhall are going to cope with the introduction of a new model to replace the Omega.